Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 7 of the Reckoning live virtual book tour. Today we're here for another reading. We're going to read chapter 5. And if you guys don't already know, my name is Kayla Canoe. I am an author, YouTuber, gamer, and aerialist. And the Reckoning is published. It will be published. It's publishing. It's releasing. Releasing is the right word. It is releasing tomorrow. Less than 24 hours, and The Reckoning is going to be available in ebook, hardback, and paperback. And I'm super excited for it. Tomorrow is also my birthday, my 30th birthday. So, yeah, we got that going on. Let's see. So, I am an adult dark fantasy author. The Reckoning is a dark fantasy book. It is intended for those who are of age, so 18 years of age or older. And I have the content warnings for the book pinned in the chat. So if you're here and you want to see those, they're in the chat. I am going to read through them as well. I don't know that I really have any announcements aside from the book is releasing tomorrow. You can pre-order the ebook today, but the physical copies won't be available for purchase until tomorrow. But guys, it's like a day away, and I'm so excited for this. And yeah, we're going to have a release party tomorrow. It's going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join me tomorrow for some excitement. Celebrate my birthday, all that good stuff. But today we're going to read. I have my book. I also have a cat on my lap, so if you see a tail, it's my cat, and he's on my lap, and he's happy. But yeah, so I am going to be reading chapter 5. If you guys missed me reading the previous chapters or any of the live events, they are all linked below. There's a playlist dedicated to the book tour. So you can check all of that out and then come back and check this out, because otherwise you're not going to know what's going on, because we are starting on chapter 5. And what else? Everything's linked below. Check it out. Subscribe to my newsletter if you want to stay up to date on when things are happening, because I will be publishing this series over the next 4 years, 5 years. There's 7 books, and I have a tentative schedule to get them all out in 4 or 5 years. I'm writing 3 books this year, if you guys didn't already know that. So yeah, I'm really excited, and we're just gonna jump right into it. That's what we're gonna do. Chapter 5. My bookmark, if you haven't seen it, every time I pull it out. And sneak peek at, this is the paperback book. This is Tyler's title page, and it's beautiful because it's got a magic symbol. All right. Chapter 5, Tyler. I woke before the sun. My parents were sound asleep in their cots next to me. They had stayed up most of the night butchering the cows in an attempt to save as much meat as possible. I was of no help to them because of the blood, so the least I could do was not interrupt their sleep. Sliding slowly out of my cot, I was careful not to make a sound. My clothes and pack lay by the front door where I had placed them the night before. I made my way toward them, but at every creak of the wooden floors I froze. Continuing on, when I was sure my parents hadn't been disturbed, I slipped into my clothes and out the door. The cold bite of morning air nipped at me through my tunic, even though I was wearing a thicker one. I hoped the warmth of the sun's rays would be upon me soon, if only the summer days could have stuck around longer. A crunch in the grass caught my attention as I walked toward the road. Nodden's dark teal eyes reflected the dim light of morning. The sun had begun to rise, but it hadn't yet made it over the horizon. "You're here," I said as Nodden came up to me. He wore his caramel brown tunic. It was my favorite one because it made his eyes pop. "I said I would be," Nodden replied. "It's not safe to wander the forest alone." I noticed the long wooden spear strapped to his back. It had sharp steel blades on both ends. "It's a good thing we won't be wandering," I said with a smile. "I know a grove where salvia grows, so I doubt you'll be needing to use that." I motioned toward his spear. Weapons only ever made bad situations worse. It was a long hike through the woods, up and down the hills. Nodden was quiet as we trudged through the damp underbrush. I took a deep breath and enjoyed the simple beauty of it. Being in the woods, surrounded by trees, I felt connected to the land. We were one, and I was at peace. The presence of Apollo, our sun god, could be felt in the warmth of the sun's rays trickling through the tree cover. He still blessed the land. By the time we reached the small clearing, the sun had risen high in the sky. I knew exactly where to find it because I had stumbled upon the dry patch of land earlier in the year. It was closer to town than our farm, but it was an undisturbed area. Dust lifted from the ground as we walked. Nodden stuck close to my side, his eyes scanning the forest. I searched the area for a few minutes, and then I saw it. Salvia. I gathered as many leaves from the plants as I could and stuffed them into my bag. It was a delicate plant, so I was careful not to disturb its roots. Hopefully, the salvia would continue to grow, and I'd be able to collect from it again. The wind picked up and the sky darkened. Nodden drew the spear from his back and took a defensive stance. A loud siren blared out across the land, scaring birds out of the nearby trees. The calling? It was definitely the sound of the calling, but it was too soon. I looked to Nodden, his wide eyes and raised brow told me he was just as confused as I was. The calling only happened once every 5 years. It was a ritual spell the King's Seers used to select competitors to take part in the reckoning. But it had only been 4 years since the last one. We should hurry back, Nodden said. I nodded in agreement and headed in the direction of town. There would be a broadcast on the viewing station about what was happening. Only beings with great magical potential were called to take part in the reckoning, so I didn't have to worry. But Nodden wasn't a sud. He had magic, and I was sure he was within the 15 to 22 age range that the competitors were selected from. An unusual sound came from behind us, and my walk quickly turned into a run. Nodden kept up with my pace as something ripped through the trees. It was getting closer to us. I didn't know what it was, but it couldn't be good. It hit me hard, and I crashed to the ground. My wrist burned with pain from the impact. Was it broken? No. When I looked down, I found a solid metal band had fused around my right wrist. It dangled, but the hole wasn't big enough for my hand to fit through. There was no way to get it off. I attempted to slide the band over my hand, and a shock zapped me. You have 30 minutes to report to the nearest viewing station, the bracelet said. A 30-minute counter popped up and began to count down by the second. Nodden helped me to my feet. His mouth hung open as he stared at the timer ticking away. When his dark-tail eyes locked with mine, I saw a desperation in them. Run, he said. I didn't move. I was frozen in fear. Tyler, you have to run, Nodden shook me, pulling me back to myself. Realizing how far I was from town, I ran. My boots were heavy and the terrain was hilly, but I ran as fast as I could. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to make it to the station in time, but if that shock the bracelet gave me was any indication, I didn't have a choice. The brush of the forest floor tore at my exposed skin as I forced my way through it. I used my hands to protect my face and scratches covered them. A thorn caught on my sleeve and tore it open, but I continued to fight through the harsh forest terrain. I had to keep my legs in motion. There was no time to rest. I could hear Nodden running through the forest behind me. He couldn't keep up with my pace, but he didn't need to. Suddenly, I was grateful for all the long-distance training my father had me do over the past few years. I could outrun anyone in Addersfield. By the time the town square came into view, I only had 5 minutes left. I ran faster as my feet found the cobblestone that stretched through the town. People crowded the streets, presumably confused by the calling. I crashed into passerby as I shoved between bodies. The viewing station was at the center of the town square. I could see the 6 large stone pillars that surrounded it. They represented the different types of magic. 5 seconds were left as I made it through the crowd. The clock struck 0 right as I passed between 2 of the pillars. A burning pain shot through my hand and I collapsed onto the crest carved in the center of the station. I gasped, trying to catch my breath. The searing pain in my hand subsided as the station came to life. Congratulations, the Darkblood King's voice filled the square. It quieted the crowd. His image appeared on the flat surface of the government building in front of me. You've survived the calling and are 1 step closer to participating in the reckoning. It's an honor to be selected for this challenge. The crowd clapped with excitement. It had been many years since someone from our town had been called. From the moment that bracelet found your wrist until the moment it's removed, you are the property of the Dark Nation. A transport will take you to the processing center before nightfall. Be sure to say your goodbyes. I look forward to seeing how well you perform in the reckoning. The Darkwood King's face disappeared as he finished his announcement. People began to cheer my name. They thanked me for the honor I brought to them. My participation in the reckoning could help save the town. I climbed to my feet as two soldiers dressed in Dark Nation's uniforms stepped out of the government building. One of the soldiers was a Talak. He had one large horn that protruded from the space between his eyes and a nasty scar that stretched across his face. It looked as though someone or something had tried to claw his face off. My stomach churned from his grotesque appearance. The second soldier I recognized from the alchemist's shop. His short black hair and olive skin complemented his uniform. However, he had unnervingly beady brown eyes that seemed to look through me as the two of them approached. Had they known about the calling before it happened? Was that why they were in town to begin with? We're here to escort you to the center, the Assad said. He used the common language this time. It was clear he thought I was uneducated. Eager to deliver me to the king, he grabbed my arm. Let's go, he growled as he pulled me out of the circle. Let her go. This is some kind of mistake. Nodin's voice broke through the crowd as he emerged from the mass. He caught the Assad's attention, and I used the distraction to pull my arm from his grip. The king does not make mistakes, the Assad replied. Then it was the seer. This girl has no magic, Nodin said as he drew near. He stood between me and the soldiers. You can make a formal complaint with your government official, the Assad said. Now if you'll step aside, I have orders to deliver this girl to the processing center. I thought I had time to say my goodbyes. My parents will need to know where I've disappeared to, and I have to get these herbs back to them, I said, loud enough for the nearby townspeople to hear. If the soldiers refused my request, the whole town would surely riot. They'd riot over anything at this point, given the king's refusal to help with the shortage of food. Fine, the Assad said, but don't dally. He shoved me forward. I walked quickly down the street with Nodin at my side. He positioned himself between me and the soldiers, a small comfort. The soldiers followed behind us. They kept a close watch on me for the entire journey. I suspected they thought I might run, but that would be pointless. The bracelet that dangled from my wrist would make it impossible for me to hide, and I knew it. A pit formed in my stomach. When we made it back to the farm, I found my parents in the barn with the cows. They had washed away all signs of the butchering that had happened just the day before and were busy trying to get the herd to stand. I walked toward them with Nodin beside me, and they finally glanced our way. Thank goodness, my mom gasped as she took notice of the salvia that stuck out of my pack. We just used up the last of it. She took the bag from me and immediately began to feed the leaves to the cows. The calling hadn't fazed her at all. She had no reason to believe her magicless daughter would be called. I was starting to worry, my father began, but stopped short when the soldier stepped up behind us. The look of dread on his face was almost too painful to see. They must have heard the alarm after all. I guess this is goodbye, he said as he pulled me in for a hug. My mother turned at my father's words and dropped my pack on the floor. She finally noticed the soldiers and the metal bracelet on my wrist. No, it can't be. Her eyes filled with tears as the realization hit her. She threw her arms around me, joining in on my father's embrace. Please come back to us. You have to come back to us. I'll do my best, I replied. I felt the wet warmth of my tears as they slid down my face. It was impossible to fight them back. My reality was fractured, and I prayed it was all a bad dream. I clung to my parents with an ache in my chest, an ache that only got worse as Nodin joined in on the group hug. All right, let's go, the Assad said as he pulled me from my family's embrace. I wanted to fight, to have a few more minutes with my parents, but there was no use. The soldiers were ready to go, and even if I would never see my parents again, I had to go with them. Goodbye, I cried as the soldiers dragged me from the barn. My parents and Nodin stood in the doorway. They waved me off with tears in their eyes, except for Nodin. He stood there with an angered expression. His fists were clenched and his muscles were tight. I wondered what he was about to do with the resolve I saw on his face. Once we were out of the view of my parents, the Tolak threw me over his shoulder. Put me down, I cried, feeling my limbs in an attempt to free myself from his enormous hands. Shut up or I'll drag you by your hair, he snarled. I froze, suddenly aware of the direness of my situation. If I struggled or resisted in any way, they would have grounds to assault me, and Tolaks were known for their ruthlessness. I relaxed and let my arms dangle lifelessly as he carried me back toward the town. The transport ship was docked at the edge of town. As we got close enough to be seen by townspeople, the Tulak put me down and let me walk on my own. I was grateful for that small amount of dignity, although I was sure he only did it so he wouldn't look bad. As we walked closer to the ship, I could see the Dark Nation's crest painted on the side of it. The emblem was painted in silver and stood out against the black color of the ship. It gave off an aura of intimidation. Inside the ship, an Asud waited for us. I was shocked when I caught a glimpse of her face. She had a soft smile and rosy cheeks, not what I expected from a Dark Nation soldier. The words she spoke were foreign to me, but the soldiers acted in response. They strapped me into a seat along the back wall of the ship, and then did the same for themselves. Once everyone was ready, the door closed and the ship took us into the sky. My stomach dropped as we shot up into the air. I had never been on a transport ship before, or in the air for that matter. The shakiness of the ride made me nauseous. I was barely able to see out the large window at the front of the ship, because the Asad's head blocked most of my view. Trees covered the hills in the distance, with leaves that had turned colors. The reds, yellows, and orange blurred together and made the world look like it was on fire. It brought me back to the burning feeling that shot through my hand, to the dire situation I had found myself in. There was no way I would survive the reckoning. I didn't have any magic. The pit in my stomach grew. I had to have been called by mistake, but the soldiers refused to listen. They didn't care that a magicless human girl had been sentenced to death. My heart raced and dizziness overcame me. Mountains stretched high into the sky in the far distance. They were the last thing I saw before the world spun out from under me. My vision blurred to black. Hi, Blue. I see you there hiding in the chats. That was it. That was chapter 5. That was Tyler's perspective. That was the calling happening. Calling is happening. Oh, guys. It's so weird reading my own story. But also, like, I'm writing the next books in the series right now. So then it's like, the journey. It's the beginning of the journey. And so much more. All right. So that is what we had for today's event. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Tomorrow we have the book launch party to celebrate the release of The Reckoning. And then on Thursday, I will be reading chapter 6. And that will be at 10 a.m. No, that'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then I will be reading chapter 7 on Friday to conclude my release week live streams, and that will be Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we have 2 more chapters left to read, and it's basically like, I want to say that it takes us through the first act of the book. So, yeah. Just me reading the first act of the book. No biggie or anything. But yeah, that is what's happening. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I am super excited. I hope you guys are excited too. If you guys do read the book, don't forget to review it because it makes all the difference in the world for us self-published authors. But yeah, hopefully I will see you guys back here tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we are going to celebrate my birthday book launch combination. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for stopping in, and I will see you later. Bye.